Hi everybody, it's week 12 and I hope you're having a good week leading up to Halloween, or if you're seeing this after Halloween, I hope you had a good holiday. This week we're going to be reading chapters 28 and 29 and the first part of chapter 30. Chapter 28, you're really going to be focusing more than anybody else on two really important political figures in California history, and that's Earl Warren and Richard Nixon. With Warren, what I want you to think about is what kinds of things did he do as governor of California that kind of presaged what he was going to be like as Chief Justice, because he turned out to be one of the most liberal Chief Justices in American history, and that's something that many of his supporters, including President Eisenhower, wondered about, and Eisenhower, I think, regretted putting Warren on the court in the first place. With Nixon, I want you to look at the kinds of campaign tactics that he used when he ran for office within California. The first run was in 1946. He ran for the Senate in 1950, and then in 1962 he's going to run for governor. The kinds of strategies that he had, the kind of mentality that he used, also presage a little bit of the Nixon presidency and Watergate. The fact that he's using a professional political consultancy firm is something worth looking at, because that was something that really grew up here in California. And Nixon, if not perfected it, he certainly pioneered the use of it. Then I also want you to look at reactionary politics. When you look at what was going on in America writ large, like HUAC and McCarthyism, you see the same kinds of things with the blacklisting movement in Hollywood, and later on the John Birch Society in Southern California. And that had a lot of popularity at the time, and I'd like you to look at why, because it's probably not an institution that would be very popular now within California politics. Moving right along to chapter 29, that focuses more on migratory farm labor. And as you're going along, I want you to think about the conditions that these workers were living under, and think about why they were so awful, and then think about why previous attempts to make them better had been such failures. We were talking about the Wobblies of the 1910s, the Communist Party a little later on, and really those organizations didn't change anything. And then along comes the UFW and Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, people like that, and they really did get some changes going. So I want you to think about why the two first movements failed and why the third one succeeded. Did the civil rights movement that was going on at the time have anything to do with this, or did the UFW happen independent of the civil rights movement? What about the use of boycotts, which was something that was not used by the two previous groups? The action of the federal government and the state government, which didn't happen in the previous movements. So this could really make for a very good discussion, even a good paper topic if we were to ever have done that. Coming into chapter 30, or the first part of it, it's focusing, this part is, on Native Americans. And in particular, it's going to talk about kind of a quick timeline of what happened with Native Americans. You've already established, I think, that their relationships with the American government in the 19th century were just deplorable. In the 1940s, we have the Indian Claims Commission Act, which will attempt to sort things out to some extent. In the 1950s, you have the termination policy, which is sort of the end of the reservation system, or an attempt to end the reservation system. Then you begin to have more increased consciousness of Indian culture by whites, and maybe a realization of the victimization that they've done of Native Americans. And then finally you get to the Alcatraz occupation by the American Indian movement in the late 60s and the early 70s. I want you to read that in concert with the Indians of All Nations reading that I've posted on the course website. All right, happy reading.